Hi everyone, my name's Amber from Majestic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to be sewing up Cotton Cut's Puzzle Mystery Quilt. This spring theme is called Village Green, and I have chosen the cornflower colorway. So it's absolutely beautiful with the greens, almost like a bluish gray and white in there. I'm very, very excited about it. I will be sewing up the small size on my channel, so you can follow me even if you have a different colorway. All the directions have A, B, C, D. It's all labeled with letters, so you can still match up what I'm saying even if you don't have the same colors. I'm super excited to be able to do this. My very first quilt I've ever made was a puzzle mystery quilt from Cotton Cuts. If you are new or you're thinking about beginning quilting, it is such a great experience. Like, all the pieces are shipped to you. They are pre-cut. The directions are clear. They even tell you which way to iron it and which way your seams need to go. It was so helpful. So I'm really excited to be doing a second quilt and being able to promote it on social media. If you are thinking of joining and you haven't joined yet, if you sign up, use code AMBERVILLAGE and you'll also get a bonus gift in your first month. So I hope you enjoy. If you like it, comment, tell me what colorway you're doing, and I can't wait to sew with you. All right, so let's take a look at what we got in our first month for the Village Green. I'm doing the cornflower colorway, and you can see here it has a lot of greens and almost like blues, and it's going to be a little tricky because some of the fabrics look very, very similar. So make sure you pay close attention to that. So let's take them out. Actually, before we take them out, let's look at this. You want to make sure you hold on to this. It has all sorts of tips and tricks. It has the dates of when every clue will ship. It gives you the Facebook group. I highly recommend you join so we can all show off our designs each month. But the most important thing is on the back. And on the back here, it has our colorway. So up top, mine says cornflower, and it says all the different fabrics and their letter. And that's really important because everybody's directions are the same, but there was multiple colorways. So we definitely need to hold on to this for every single month. Okay. So you should have all your pieces. And because it's month one, they also sent a little gift. And in mine was this super cute pin. So you should have had something in yours as well. And if you signed up using any of the ambassador codes, you might have gotten a bonus gift. So if you still want to sign up, if you use the code AMBERVILLAGE, you will get a bonus gift. And then you should have your directions in there. So what I like to do first is sort all my pieces based on this diagram down here. And this is exactly what I was talking about, where it says fabric A, B, C, D, F. So we are going to need to make sure that we match those up. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and I like laying out all my pieces the same exact way that they show here. It just helps my brain to work that way. Okay, so you should have 16 piece A's. So this grayish fabric is my piece A. So there's 16 of these smaller ones. And then you should have 2 large. Now I'm laying out the row B. So this white fabric is my letter B. So I'm going to put that here. There's 4 of these, 2 bigger triangles, and 2 squares. Okay. Next, I'm putting out C and D. So my C fabric is this greenish here. And then D is this darker one with gold. So you should have 2 large squares and 2 triangles of the darker gray if you're doing corn flour. And then the last row is row F. So running out of space, but that's okay. I have my 2 triangles, 2 large rectangles, and 4 squares. So this helps my brain to have it laid out exactly like the paper shows. So now we are going to, these are the blocks that we're making. So we are going to move on to actually constructing our blocks, and we're going to start with 1A. Okay, so we are going to build our first block. We actually need to make 2 of section 1A. So I'm only going to do 1 at a time, but it may be easier for you to sew them both at the same time. We are going to use a 1/4 inch seam, and there's a YouTube channel at Mystery Quilter, and it gives you the link up here. If you check that out, it will show how she does her 1/4 inch. I'll show you when I get to the machine how I do it for myself. So the first one, we need a large A triangle. So for me, it is gray. So you're going to get whatever color your A is. And we are going to sew a small of triangle B. So I have my B here. And we're going to start by putting it up on the right-hand side. So the great thing is that these are all die cut. So everything should match up or line up perfectly. So you can use pins or clips. I prefer clips. So we are going to take it to our machine and we are going to sew along here at a 1/4 inch. Okay, so now we should be at our machine. I am using a size 70-10 needle, universal, and I am sewing on an older Singer, a Singer 5528, and I'm using Gutermann thread, just from Joann's. I know many people use cotton, but I'm normally a bag maker, so this one is polyester, but you could use either. So before we sew, I am just making sure I adjust your settings, and you can use what's called a leader. So we are going to sew along this edge here at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but sometimes the fabric can get sucked down into your machine. The smaller needle does help, but you can use what's called a leader to help you with that problem as well. So what you're going to do is you are just going to sew, and then we are going to feed our triangle in. So the edge of my presser foot is a 1/4 inch. Some quilters use a scant 1/4 inch. I find I'm very bad at that, and I don't always keep it equal. So I'm just using the 1/4 inch for my quilt. And if it's helpful for you, I also have a seam guide that I put on my machine to help me do that. And then we are going to sew right down here at a 1/4 inch. And I do not backstitch for this because we will be going over these seams multiple times. And I find if I backstitch, it also is more likely to get sucked down into the machine. All right. I am going to clip my thread, and I'm going to cut off this leader here and leave it near my machine for the next one. And we are going to take this back to our mat or ironing board and press this open. All right, so we have sewn our first triangle B onto our large triangle A. So I'm back at my wool pressing mat. You might have one of these, or you might use an ironing board. And now we are going to press this open. So on your directions, if you look, it tells you which way you're going to press it towards. So you're going to follow those arrows. So we are pressing towards B. So I have my iron, and I don't have any water in it for steam. I don't want my pieces to shrink or warp. So I like pressing it how it is here. I'm very bad about sometimes I actually try to iron back and forth. Try not to do that. That will warp your fabric. And then I just take my fingers. I'm going to press it open gently with my fingers. And I'm going to just press that seam open. All right, so looking at our directions, we have one more piece that we need to add to that, which is another triangle B. So I have my triangle B fabric, and I'm just checking to make sure that I have the correct. So we are putting right sides together. And again, we are lining up. So you can see that this is pressed open. Our triangle edges should still line up perfectly, even though this was already pressed. Okay, and I'm going to take this to my machine, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch from right here all the way over to the end. All right, so we just sewed our second triangle B on. And again, I'm just going to give it a slight press here. We want it, again, pressed towards the B piece. So I'm just going to leave it flat. Use my fingers, and you don't want to pull on your block. So you don't want to warp it. And then you're just going to press it open. So you are going to make 2 of these, and then we are moving on to our next step. Step 2, we need a large F triangle. So for me, F is the darker green. And we need 2 small A pieces. And for me, it's the lighter gray. So again, I like to just lay mine out exactly like they're supposed to go. And we are attaching them the same way that we did in step 1. Yeah, the arrows are even being pressed open the same way. So I'm going to line up these edges. I love that these are die cut for you and they have the flat edges. All right, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch along the seam. All right, so we just sewed along here, and I don't know if I mentioned it previously, you want to always make sure that you are sewing right sides together, so the pretty side of your fabric is facing each other. So again, I'm going to give it a press. I am going to open it using my fingers. I'm not really pulling on the fabric. I don't want it to warp. And then I'm pressing it open. All right, and we're going to do just like we did for the first one. And we are adding the second triangle. I try to line up my edges, make sure they're as lined up as close as possible. Okay. And I'm going to take this to my machine and sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so we just now sewed and attached our second piece A. And we want the seam pressed towards the piece A triangle. So I just gave it a little press there. And again, I'm opening it with my fingers. And then I am pressing it with the iron. And again, I'm not using steam. I found the steam sometimes warps the blocks or makes them shrink. All right, so now we are moving on to step 3. And in step 3, we actually have to attach both of these rectangles that we've already made. So you can see the second one is on the bottom and the top one is going to be like this. So they're going to look like this. So we are going to flip this one down, line up the edges. You want to get them as lined up as possible. And just a note that the directions, they do show the final measurements. You could measure them and trim them, but the last quilt I didn't do that. I just followed along and it still came out absolutely beautiful. So I'm doing the same thing here. So I folded the top one that we made down on top of step 2. So this is step 1, this is step 2, and I'm going to sew along at 1/4 inch. All right, so we just sewed along at 1/4 inch. I'm going to press this here. And our directions, the arrows show that they want it pressed towards the top. So I'm just going to flip this up. Use my fingers to kind of help open it up gently. And then press it open. And you can see that mine's like a little bit off right here, but I'm not worried about it. When we sew, it will all come together. So we're going to set this aside and we are going to move on to step 4. So step 4, we need a B square and an F square. So my B is this white colored fabric. Okay. And my F square is this blue, darker blue green. Okay. And we are going to attach them together. So I'm folding this right sides together. Let me just check. Okay. I'm folding these right sides together. And we are going to sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you are making 2 of these. And just a reminder, just double check your fabric. Sometimes them, like this white one, is very tricky to see which side is the correct side. All right, so we just sewn our B square to our F square, and our directions are telling us that it's going to get pressed towards the F side. So I am going to press the seam, and then I'm gently going to open it up again, just like we've been doing with my fingers. And press it again. Okay. Now we are ready for our next step. We are going to attach piece F. So for me, it's this medium greenish blue. Oh, sorry. Medium greenish blue here. That's my piece F. It's the only rectangle that we have. Okay. And it's going to go on the bottom here. So I'm going to do this, flip it over, and clip in place. And I'm going to take this to the machine and sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we have just sewn our piece F onto the squares B and F. So we also have to press it down. So I'm going to press here. And I am going to fold this open, pressing lightly with my fingers. And then I'm pressing it again. So you will be making 2 of these. And our final step for section 1A is we are going to join this section here with our first set that we made. So you should have 2 squares. And so here, if you notice, this is where mine is not so even. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip mine here and match up the sides. But I'm just gonna bring it in a little bit. When I sew at 1/4 inch, it's still gonna catch that. So I'm just gonna make sure that it does get caught up in my seam or in my sewing as I'm sewing. I guess you could also trim the top one too if you wanted, but I'm not going to. All right, so I'm gonna take this back to the machine and we are gonna sew it at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've taken you over to the sewing machine with me because I wanted to show you how I'm doing this one that's like a little bit less on this side. So I'm gonna use my leader piece. And I'm sewing with this side up so I can see to make sure I catch everything. So I'm putting it right up against my seam guide. And sewing at the 1/4 inch. And I can see that it's catching. There's plenty, so I'm not really worried about it. This is called a stiletto, this tool that I'm using. It's handy to help push the fabric through. Right, and I'm trimming off the leader here, and I'm going to take this back to the mat to press. All right, so I'm back at my mat. We want the seam pressed this way. So I'm just going to press it once like this. And then I'm going to flip it open gently and also use my fingers. Now, before I press, you can see I probably should have did this and I didn't think about it. I should have lined up the center of these 2 rectangles. You can see mine's a little bit off, but I'm not worried about it. If this is something that you are worried about, you want to make sure that you line up that center seam before you do this. But it's not a big deal to me, so I'm just going to press it as it is. All right, so we are done with our 1A. Sorry, this one was just looked a little bit warped there. So we are done with section 1A. You should have made 2 of these, and we are going to move on to section 1B. Okay, so now we are moving on to section 1B. We are going to be making 2 of these as well. So for the first part, I need 1 square of my F fabric and 2 squares of my triangles of my A fabric. And again, just make sure you're grabbing the correct side facing up. And I like to lay mine out exactly how they are going to be sewn, because if not, sometimes I've been known to sew them to the wrong edges. So we are going to sew this triangle first. So I'm going to line it up here, and I'm going to take it to my machine and sew at 1/4 inch. All right, I just sewed. We are going to press our seams to the right. So I'm just going to press right there. I'm going to gently open and use my finger to smooth them out and give it another press. Right, and we are going to attach our second small A triangle down, and we should be able to line it up perfectly. And I'm going to take that to machine and sew across the top at 1/4 inch. All right, I just sewed along the top here, and we are pressing towards the top. I'm just going to give it a press, fold it open, use my fingers to gently open it up. All right, and I'm going to also set this one to the side. For step 2, we need to sew a large triangle B to a large triangle D and make 2. So let me grab those fabrics. The lighter color is my B, and this darker one, which has like a yellowish gold in it, is my D fabric. All right, so this is where you want to really make sure that you line up your triangles. And I always refer to the picture because, again, I sometimes am known to sew them incorrectly. So you want to make sure that you have the correct sides of your fabrics facing up. And again, I have it matched up with the picture. So then I fold them down. And line up the edges. I'm going to clip them together. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to the machine and sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so I just sewed at 1/4 inch. I'm going to give it a press, and we actually need it pressed towards the D side. So I'm going to flip it over this way here and fold down, using my fingers to gently press it open and then taking the iron to press it. All right, so now we are going to grab our other piece that we just sewed in 1B, and we are going to join these two together. So they should line up. And now I'm going to be much more mindful of lining up my center. So I want my center crease here to match up with the crease in that square. So I'm going to do that by just kind of lifting this up so I can see a little bit and then laying it down. That way those will match up. Okay, I'm going to clip the edge. Fabric likes to stick together. All right, so now I'm going to take it to my machine and sew along at 1/4 inch. All right, so we just sewed along the top. I'm going to give it a press. And it's going to be folded facing F, our square. So I'm gently going to open it and use my fingers to press open the seam. And you can see that our point lined up perfectly. And give it a press with the iron. Right, and again, we're going to set this aside for a minute, and we are moving on to step 4. Step 4 needs the square of C. So that's my green fabric here, and 2 small A's. Well, actually, it's going to be 4 A's, but we're going to do 2 at a time. So let me count on 4. 2, 3, 4. Perfect. All right. So again, I'm going to line my fabric up exactly like the picture shows. And I'm going to place this here. Right about that. So I'm going to place this here. And you can see that this one, the edges kind of go over a little bit. So I'm just centering it as best as I can. Right. And then I'm also going to do the bottom one. We want it to look like this. So right sides together. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew along each side at 1/4 inch. All right, so these are going to be pressed open towards each of the triangles. So I'm just going to press down on each side. And open them, give them a nice finger press, and then press it with the iron. And the same for the other side. All right, and we are going to add our next 2 pieces of A triangles. We're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to attach them at the same time. And they line up a little bit better now that we have the other triangles sewn. All right, so we are going to take this to our machine and sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so now these seams are getting pressed towards the triangles as well. So I'm just giving a press on this side. And I am using my fingers again to open it up gently. You don't want to pull on it to warp it. And then give it a press. Okay, and the same for the top. All right, so for our final step, we are attaching the 2 squares that we made in this one together. So we want them laid out just like this. Our F square is in the top left. This one is shaped like a diamond. And I'm folding them together. There's no crease to line up right here or seam. So I'm just going to fold them up and match up the edges. Okay, I'm going to take this to the machine and sew at 1/4 inch. Okay, so we just sewn along this edge here, and we are going to press it open towards this side. So I'm going to give my seam a press on this side. And I am going to gently flip it open. Give it a finger press. And then press with my iron. All right, and we are finished. This is our 1B. This is our 1A. And you should have 2 each of these. And I highly recommend putting like a little piece of paper or a sticky note and labeling this 1A and this 1B. It will help us a lot when it comes time to put it all together the very last month. I always keep the plastic bags and I actually put them in together by month. So this is my month 1. I will keep all of these in here in month 1, and I'll put the labels on. All right, so we just finished sewing up our blocks. You should have 2 that look like this, and another 2 like this. And I definitely recommend labeling them, the 1A, 1B. Make sure that you put them away like that. I keep them in my plastic bag because at the end, when we get to month 10, it will make it much easier. So I encourage you that there is a Facebook group for cotton cuts and a special group for anybody doing the PMQs. I would love for you to join it, show off your block. Please make sure to comment. I want to know what colorway you're doing, and let me know what you think so far. Thanks so much.